This is former All-Pro Dolphins lineman Richmond Webb, and you're listening to The Grueling Truth.
Welcome to The Grueling Truth Show, The Real Deal. I'm your host, Josh Benjamin. This show has various sports topics, and the show will be available on Sunday mornings on our website, www.gruelingtruth.net, or iTunes with the search phrase Grueling Truth to listen to our show anytime you want. I want to give a quick shout-out to Mike Goodpasture for giving me this great opportunity. Tonight's sports topic is AAU and travel teams. I have 3 guests coming on the show tonight. First guest is named Kevin Moore. He is the girls basketball coach at East Central High School. He has over 100 wins in 8 seasons and has built that program into something special, having 17 or more wins in the past 4 seasons. I also have a few coaches coming on at the college level, one being head baseball coach Benjamin Reel. He is the baseball coach at Indiana University Southeast. He is in his 8th season at the age of 31. He is one of the youngest head coaches in the country to get to 200 wins. My last guest is family. He is the head girls basketball coach at Mount St. Joseph's University. His name is Dan Benjamin. No one calls him by his first name. Everyone calls him Bear, so you'll hear me reference him by that through this podcast. He just completed his 2nd season at the Mount, and when they made the conference tournament for the first time in 10 years. So he's changing that program around and making them into a contender. Welcome you 3 to The Real Deal. We have so much to talk about tonight, so we're just going to jump right in. Fellas, I'm going to ask all 3 of you the same question. In your opinion, let's start with you, Kevin. What is the role of an AAU/travel team, in your opinion?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, Josh. In my opinion, the AAU mindset is, I think you have to look at it from an age standpoint. It depends on what grade level or level you're talking about. At the youth level, it should be about skill development. You hear the words exposure events. You hear, all these people putting ratings out there and rankings of these kids that are in the 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. And in my opinion, that's just a little early for that. At the high school level, I think it is about exposure. I think the kids that get into the AAU circuit are the kids that want to play at that next level, and it gives them the platform to get recognized by the college coaches. Because in my opinion, the AAU is set up for the college coaches to see all the best players in the same venues, whereas it's hard to get out during a high school season to see a bunch of different players because they're scattered all around the state. But from a standpoint of ours, we have well over 30 kids in an AAU program based where we're at in the tri-state. There are a lot of options in Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky.
Okay. Well, I totally agree with the aspect of youth development in those different areas and what meets the criteria for those age levels. Coach Ben Reel, that same question, what is the role of an AAU travel team? I know we've been tossing back some emails here and there, and you had mentioned that you own an AAU program. Can you kind of talk about that and then the role that it plays for you?
Yes. Well, baseball is a little tricky. A lot of these places geographically, a lot of the high schools, they don't have a very good high school summer program for baseball, so kids tend to reach out and try to get that exposure and get that development through an AAU standpoint. We started the Kentucky and the Kingsmen last year for high school kids that just needed to further their development and be able to get out on a more of a national stage and travel more and be in front of the in college, a lot of coaches like to group up and go to these events. It's just you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, per se. You can get out and see some of the top kids in the geographic area at one tournament versus if you're playing Legion ball, you're playing high school, summer ball. It's just hard. You're going from spot to spot just to look for one player where you can see a group of individuals. And it's more concentrated. So I think the AAU, plays a huge role in baseball and moving on to that collegiate level. Personally,
very good, Coach Bear. I know your head coaching gig is in the Cincinnati area. and I know you go around constantly on recruiting trips. What's your role, or what do you think their role is as far as an AAU team in coordinates to you?
Thanks for having me, Josh and Kevin and Ben. It's great to hear you guys talk about your perspective. You guys both brought up a key point in fundamentals. That's the biggest thing I'm looking for out of an AAU coach. Are they teaching my kids the fundamentals? A lot of people don't realize that most of the kids, I've coached baseball as well as football and softball and women's basketball and all levels, but the fundamentals aren't being taught half the times, and I know Kevin personally does that over there, and we need to continue to do that. The exposure's there. If you just look at social media, the exposure's there. I can remember back in my 30 years of coaching that I had a kid who told me, he said, "Coach, I need to transfer to Roger Bacon." At the time I was coaching football there. And I said, "Why?" He said, "I'm going to get better exposure." And I told him, I said, "If you're that good, scouts are going to find you." The other piece of the puzzle with all the AAU and select that's not out there, people don't realize, is profiling. On the college level, we profile. If you don't meet a certain criteria as an athlete, they don't care how good you are. They don't care what your stats are, if you can perform. They're more worried about do you fit their profile. And that happens in all sports across the table there. But, the biggest thing is that they're giving exposure to all these kids, and parents got to keep that perspective, the right exposure. Is it what their kids want?
And, you kind of touched on something that I truly believe in. And when you said, if you are good, whether it's a high school program, AAU, or travel team, if you're good enough, you're going to get that notice from that college or colleges or universities throughout the country. So I couldn't agree more with that, Bear. All three of you really are in contact with AAU and travel coaches. Ben, I know that you said you owned that team, a travel team. And so, with Kevin and Bear, if you guys could answer, what conversations do you have with those AAU coaches or those programs, and, how do they help you? Kevin, could you go with that?
Yeah, so as you said, I just finished up my 7th year, and when I took over, we had one kid in our entire K through 12 program that played AAU basketball. So I contacted them initially, because we're in an area, southeastern Indiana, where if we're going to play in the Indiana circuit, we got to go to Indianapolis. So a lot of our kids ended up going to the Cincinnati area or Northern Kentucky just because of an easier transportation method. So as the years went on, now it's kind of the script is flipped where, we are a pretty successful program, and I've got AAU coaches contacting us about our kids. So, whether it be email, text, or phone call, they'll call me and say, "Hey, we're having this tryout event. Can you spread the word?" And that's where I'll send out an email to our basketball network or, specifically contact parents. But the conversations that I'll have with them, and Coach Baird talked about it, I want to know what they're teaching these kids. Are they just going to go play games? Are they meeting to practice once a week, twice a week? Are they focused on especially at that youth level? And we've really grown to have some strong relationships with specific AAU clubs. And I don't try to pigeonhole our kids to go to those clubs. It's their choice, it's their parents' choice. But we've had a really good track record with some of those programs. And you get a sense of comfort because those kids are being treated the right way. They're working on their areas of improvement and staying in contact with me, really, which is the big thing.
Okay. Coach Baird, could you kind of touch on that a little bit as far as the conversations you have with AAU coaches for your programs?
Absolutely. The one thing I'll look at is their character, and I'll ask the coach that at the beginning. What's their character like on the playing surface? What's their character like in the classroom? Is this a kid that I want in my program that's going to excel my program? I'll take a less talented kid because I guarantee I'm like Josh, I'm like you, and I'm like Kevin, I'm like Ben. I'm going to develop them everywhere along the line. I've preached this for 30-plus years. Everybody says, "Oh, that kid's a pro athlete." And you say, "Yeah, okay. So why do they have coaches?" Coaches are constantly teaching them some different things in life and on the playing field or surface to get better. No matter what you look at, whatever sport you look at, that's across the board. So the first thing I'm looking at is character. The second thing I'm going to ask that AAU/select coach is, what is mom and dad like? If mom and dad are over the top, and I don't care how good the kid is, I just turned a couple of them down in the last year or two, I won't take the kid. I want somebody who's going to build the program and leave a legacy that's better than what they got when they came to me.
That's a great philosophy, and kind of a piggyback off last week. I talked about kind of my coaching philosophy and building character, providing life lesson situations, and that's in my opinion that's the type of player that I want. Obviously, that must be a family trait with us, but those things will basically carry your program to the next level, and I fully believe that. This is for Ben, Coach Reel, and Coach Bear. Being a coach at the college level, how do you utilize those AAU and travel teams for your program? If you would, Coach Reel, start with that.
Well, they're a huge part, really any coach that I talk to, my first question to an AAU coach or a high school coach is, who is your favorite player? I think every good coach, their favorite player are guys who are dedicated, guys who are resilient, guys who are hard-nosed, guys who are mature. Like Coach Bear said, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, so they have a good family. But my AAU contacts are some of the most trusted contacts that I have, guys who really have taken, I guess a more in-depth interest. They've been with them for years. They know them, a lot. I can't say a lot better. I think they're more in tune with the kid. The kid wants to play for the AAU team. It's not like he has to. It's not like it's his high school. That's the school he's at. I know that's changed a little bit in recent years, but when we played, you went to the school in your district. Now, they have a little bit more. They can go to different schools and stuff. But the AAU coach, the kid wants to play for that team, so the coach may have some more insight into, a lot of the questions that I have. And the coaches have mentioned it. The big thing is the profile, and we're looking for AAU programs that match our profile. Good kids, great students, great moral fiber. People you can really trust and count on, and I found that the contacts that I use have they can answer those questions truthfully and consistently. So
very good. Yeah, I think I choose like the best guest in the world when it comes to coaching philosophies. I think we all match ours pretty well. Coach Bear, the college level, utilizing AAU travel teams. I know one would probably be recruiting, obviously. Are there any other things besides that you utilize AAU teams for?
Not so much. I think Ben hit it right on the head. You're looking at that character and profile. I'll even look at the character of the coach. That relationship has to happen, and that's big. Can I trust that person to send me somebody that they want to make a part of their family? And if that's the case, then I'm definitely going to give them a look. But, the biggest thing for AAU and select baseball is they give great exposure. You don't have that in some of the other sports. And they give great exposure to all kids. But parents have to keep that in mind that, 99% of their kids are going Division III, if they're lucky, Division II. Not Division I like they think. But I think Ben hit it right on the head. I'm looking at the character of all the players and the coaches and see how their philosophy matches up with mine. But exposure is big nowadays. I think we come across at least anywhere from, in just the month of April and May, we're going to come across 200 to 300 kids. And that's Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana. That's only going an hour and a half out from our university. I can't imagine if I go to Chicago or Nashville or Michigan, how many more kids I'm going to come across.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. And, supposedly with these AAU and travel teams, there's, that quote-unquote better competition, hopefully fundamentally for sure, at least in our opinions from what it sounds like, and they promote those fundamentals, to make them, students of the game, kind of like I believe what all four of us want to happen. Kevin, at the high school level, I know you mentioned some lower grade level AAU teams and how that helps you. How are those maybe maybe it's youth, maybe it's middle school, maybe it's even high school. How are those AAU teams utilized for your program, and how would you want them to be utilized for the future?
Well, at the high school level, we use it as in our off season due to our IHSA rules. In the off season is very much restricted on how much time we're allowed with these kids, and when we are allowed with them, what are we allowed to do? For example, if I want to instruct a kid of ours that's in the off season, I can only do that in a small group setting of 3 kids. Well, that's kind of difficult to get some in-game situation stuff taken care of. So that's why we really push our kids to get involved with the AAU circuit. It allows them to keep a basketball in their hands, if you will, in the off season and get that game experience, hopefully along with the skill development platform as well. At the high school level, I see it as it is about exposure, and Coach Bear said it best. The kids and the parents really need to take a step back and think, okay, where is my daughter or son's skill level best suited for at the college level? And after 7 years, we've had 1 kid go to Division I. So, and Coach said it best, more than likely you're not a Division I athlete, but you have the passion and the desire to play at that next level. Somebody will find you, and then it's the exposure at the high school level and then on the AAU circuit. And, I'll use the Indiana Flight as an example. Many of our kids go through that organization. He does a great job, Greg Mason, of having relationships with the college coaches, using that social media platform to get kids exposure, goes to the different events, stays in touch with the high school coach, which I really, really appreciate. The other thing that I use it as is the kids are playing for a different voice, a different mindset. That's always a good thing, especially if you respect that coach and know that they're doing it the right way. And we've had really good experiences with almost every club that we've had kids go through.
That's awesome. That experience has always been positive. I watch TV, and obviously, on ESPN, I've seen, horror stories about AAU teams and coaches and things like that, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. The perception of AAU and travel teams from your guys' perspective seems pretty positive. Starting with you, Coach Reel, how does it get better from here as far as the AAU travel team situation?
I think the fundamental and that information is there to be shared. I think a lot of people seem to think they have, the secret, and you come over here and you're going to learn something that you've never learned before, and we have the magic potion, and that's not the way it really works. I mean, all successful programs, I think, embody the same values. I think, and I think moving forward, the watered down versions of AAU is what's hurting it. So I think moving forward, I think kids need to learn how to play. If you want to go and play at the collegiate level on a nationally recognized program, you got to learn how to play amongst good players. You got to learn how to be a teammate. You got to learn how to be a program guy. You have to learn how to, play alongside other great players. And it's not about the one kid that plays shortstop that's calling off every fielder to field the ball and, or has to get the game-winning hit. It's about knowing your role. So I think, it gets better by just not every time you're not the star of a team, you don't go out and join a new A. It's just more like the trading block. So I think that's where it's kind of at. I think it was at a really bad point a couple of years ago. It's actually gotten better in the greater Louisville area as of late. We consolidated a couple AAU teams when we started our own, the Kentucky Kingsmen, just to, help kids realize that when you get to that next level, you're not going to be, if you're going to play on a good team, you're not going to probably be the best player on the team. You're going to play amongst great players. You need to learn that, learn how to play as a team. But I think how we can move forward in a positive light is to communicate. I think that there has to be, a working relationship amongst high school and AAU coaches and college coaches and AAU coaches. And you do that by developing a good rapport with each other and on, most importantly, I think just trust and just, openly sharing information. It's not about, having the best kept secret. I think that's where I kind of fall short when I evaluate, certain programs. It's just, everybody's thinking they have the right answers. It's only their way. Kevin mentioned, hearing a different voice. Some kids just, you can tell them one thing, and then, they don't do it, and then the other coach tells them the same thing, and one of my assistants may tell one of my guys the same thing, and it clicks with the kid. It's just hearing it from a different microphone. So that's just my opinion.
Good deal. Yes. Yeah, and kind of being the same age as you, Coach Reel, I've seen similar things, and the negative aspect, which you talked about a little bit before that, and how it's changed the positive, and that's awesome. That's great for parents. That's great for kids. That's great for college. That's great for everyone. So that's a great perception, and hopefully it continues to get better and better. Coach Moore, could you kind of touch on your perception of AAU travel teams, and give me one or two things that's going to make it better for the future?
Yeah. As I alluded to, we've had really good experiences. There's with anything out there, especially with the amount of money some of these programs are asking, there is some type of a negative perception at times. Some coaches will say AAU is a necessary evil. I hear that quite often, amongst some high school coaches. But myself, I look at it as, these kids are important to me. I want to stay on top of it. I'm going to reach out to these AAU coaches, or I'm going to filter them into a program that I trust. That's why I have a positive perception of it. From a standpoint of getting better, I would just caution people to stop putting so much weight into these teams being called elite or select, or these sponsored events that are the exposure events or national. That's the stuff where we give these kids and these parents a false sense of entitlement, or a false sense of where they really are because of the way things are worded. That's something that I think could get better. And the other thing is, and this is at the highest level, the D1 athletes, there's some of these handlers, if you will, where the kids are influenced by them, and they are using these kids to get to that coaching level at the college. You hear it all the time at the Division I college basketball level, where this kid will go to Kansas, as an example, as long as this guy gets a director of operations job or an assistant coaching job. And that's some of the negative perception that you hear as well.
Yes, and actually I was going to refer to a story about a similar situation with an AAU coach and having Division I athletes and trying to get them to go to a certain college so they could get their position at the college. So, yes, and unfortunately it only takes a couple of those incidents that, kind of give that negative perception. But with coaches like all three of you that are in contact with those AAU travel teams, kind of guide them too, because, some of those coaches have been there for a long time, but there's also, coaches that just jump into it and they don't really know what's going on, and to have a resource like yourselves is pretty important. Coach Bear, you've been coaching just for a few years now. When I say a few, I mean probably as long as I've been born, and that's a great thing because you see how the AAU and travel teams have evolved more than all three of us probably combined. So if you could touch on that perception and maybe even how it's evolved, and maybe a thing or two that's made it better or that could make it better.
Well, it definitely makes it better because of the exposure piece, but it's how they go about it. The bad thing is, and Kevin and Ben, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I've done obviously baseball with my son, softball with my daughter, football at the high school level, now basketball on the women's side, and it's like every day and any day somebody can pop up with a new AAU program. And I think Kevin hit it on the head. Coaches have to keep the athletes' message in check. That what do they want out of it? What are they going to get out of it? Is that kid at the level of Division III or Division II or Division I? They have to keep it real with him. He's 100% right. There's a lot of coaches that'll go out and say, I got 5 kids D2 and I got 5 that are playing D1, and they're letting their egos get in the way. I've had an experience over the last 2 years. I've coached college softball as well, and had a young lady had a D1 full ride. Called me during the Christmas break and said, I want to come play for you. I had her all ready to come on board, and her select baseball coach said, hey, wait a minute, you're better than that. And I stepped back and I thought, what the heck is he thinking? Yeah, she was better athletically, but the D1 school she went to didn't even have the degree she needed. Well, then she went on to a D2 school, got everything paid for but $500, and they still don't have the program. And I called him up. I said, what are you thinking? This girl is going to come out of here with a degree that she doesn't even want or is not even going to use. In the long run, she's going to be looking for this degree. So now she's spending another 3 years after the 4 years she went. So I think coaches have to keep that in perspective as they go through the AAU and the select sports programs. You know, they do have great aspects amongst them, but I think it is saturated. I think I heard Kevin say that, and I've witnessed personally a handful of people doing that. I've watched them in tournaments, and the next thing I know, there's 3 kids playing from a boys AAU team playing on this Ohio team, and they're from Georgia. So you're not really a coach. You're not making them better. That's the part that upsets me about the AAU and select programs. If you're a true coach, keep the kids, you know, in your heart, what they want at the end, and keep them fundamentally sound.
Yeah, Josh, can I jump back in there on that?
Absolutely. Go ahead, Kevin. So,
yeah, and Bear mentioned it, and that's kind of what sparked it. You know, in my mind, there are really good AAU and travel team coaches out there. And, you know, maybe they're AAU coaches because their full-time job doesn't allow them to be a high school coach. It doesn't fit into their schedule. So that's one thing that from a positive standpoint. The other thing is just the professionalism of some of the travel team and AAU coaches. I was at an event up in Indianapolis recently watching some of our kids, and just that's the negative perception at times, is that these AAU coaches, the way they handle themselves with the officials, which kind of carries down to the kids. You know, I actually watched one coach a game with a backpack on and a backwards hat. So it's the perception that, you know, that kind of waters down the coaching and the respect factor.
Yeah, and, you know, this is not on my question list, but and you guys kind of already touched on the positive and negative aspects of AAU travel sports. You know, should there be some kind of course or a class or something that someone has to take to be an AAU or travel coach? I know some of us may have taken some course or two at the college level when we were getting our degrees, or we had that experience before we even started becoming a full-time coach, whether it was a volunteer or a student coach at the college level. Do you think there should be some kind of certification so that these things don't happen? Because, you know, really, who's it hurting? It's hurting the kid. And, you know, kind of what Coach Bear said about that player that went to play at a college that didn't even have their major, you know, that's not giving them the right advice or setting them up for success, and I believe that's what coaches should do. So, you know, Coach Reel, do you think that there should be a certification class or course or some kind of something to help these people that want to become coaches to become those types of coaches at the AAU travel level?
I mean, absolutely. I think what people don't understand is, you know, perception is reality. You know, when you go out to, you know, we host tournaments here at the university, and, you know, you'll have travel teams come in, and you'll have the one guy that it's all about him. You know, he's got to argue every call. He's got to argue every ball and strike. He's got to, you know, cause a scene, and, you know, it just, you know, it's like you don't want kids from his team. You know, it's like who would sign up to play for him? So, you know, it's not only hurting him and his perception, it's hurting his kids, you know, because the perception is that they signed up for that, you know. But, yeah, I think, you know, in anything, I mean, you know, knowledge is power. So, you know, getting these, you know, I think it's gotten better. I mean, from a baseball aspect, it used to be really bad. I mean, there was a time where in Indiana all there really was, you know, Legion baseball was king, and then it went through a phase where, you know, and Josh, you remember this. I mean, you know, when we played Legion, that's what we did, and it was some of the best experience of our life. And then it went, well, you know, if you weren't starting on Legion, then your dad was starting a travel team, and it's kind of gone away from that. You know, the college coaches have, you know, really shunned that from a baseball side. Like, you know, we're going off reputable sources. And at the point we're in present day with, you know, the majority of, you know, AAU baseball, you know, summer teams, you know, in high school, 15U to, you know, 17U, it's most of the your reputable sources are guys that do things the right way, and they in turn have backgrounds and pedigrees that revolve around the game of baseball. They played at a high level, or they they coached at a high level, or they were a very successful coach at the high school level, or even, one of our best local travel guys is a dad who played Division I baseball, who has been, he took a group of kids from 12 years old and coached them all the way through, and now he's back at 13U. His guys are 13 years old. He did what Coach Bear's talking about. He gets these kids, he invests his time in them. That's why we started our program with the 15U. We only have one team. We don't have 7 teams. We have one, and we're investing our time in into these 13 young men from all different high schools. With the blessing of their coach. And our motto is, your high school programs come first. This is just to add on. This is just to keep we're not going to say, okay, you can't play at your high school game, your high school summer game over us. That's not what we're about. We're about doing what's best for the kids. And college coaches, we still put a lot of stock in the high school coach. My first phone call or my first email, any kid, whether just out of respect, is to their high school coach, and to say, what do you think about this young man? Not even necessarily how good is he. What do you think about him? How are his grades? What do his transcripts look like? Is he a guy who is consistently in school? Is he somebody who is a leader? He may be the best player at their high school. If so, does he act like in a leadership form? So, but going back to the question, I think what these kids are quote unquote signing up for is more credibility and more experience and more coaching and more professionalism. So yes, I think these coaches should have a background, an extensive background in coaching, or at least in the sport and how it operates at a higher level.
Being a coach, and maybe this is a topic of discussion for another time, is coaching. Being a coach, all three of you know, and listeners out there know, how much impact, how much time, how much, setting them up for success, all those things, and about 10,000 other things that you have to do to make sure that you are taking care of essentially your child. And that should be the mentality of every coach when it comes to being head of a program, being an assistant, whatever it is, whatever your role is. Those are your children, and you should treat them in every way of the aspect of your child. And some of these negative and positive things of AAU travel teams, we talked a little bit about, kind of wrap it up here. Coach could be in it for themselves, like I think Kevin talked about, with that coach at the Division I level when it comes to AAU kids and trying to get a job at the AAU, or at the Division I school. And sometimes they don't even have practices. I know both the coaches, Coach Bear and Kevin, you guys talk about that, where it's games only. It's like an open gym setting. They may even get worse in a setting like that, and they're not used to something like that. And it may make them a different type of person, and may not want them to work hard. And one of the things I think Kevin touched on a little bit is it may cost a lot, whether because of the travel or because of the fees that they have to get into these tournaments, all of those. And one thing that all three of us probably have to some extent is the community sport or the community support aspect. And I think that's lost in AAU sports, because you have someone, I believe one of you were talking about, one from Georgia, one from Cincinnati, and so on. And the community aspect, that's completely lost in my opinion, unless you have something like Coach Reel has, when it's one location, surrounding areas, if that, and you're able to hone in on that community. The positive things you guys talked about already are exposure and playing, with better competition around you, so you get to handle those situations better. And obviously you play more and you get more experience. And hopefully you become a student of the game and your IQ goes way up in that sport. And, with parents out there that are trying to make these decisions, if all three of you could give me 1 to 2 or even 3 things that you would give to a parent as far as advice pursuing or being asked about AAU travel teams? We'll start with you, Coach Bear, and then Coach Reel, then Coach Moore.
I'd have to say definitely pick a coach who is in it for your kids, all of them, collectively, not just yours individually, but collectively. He's willing to make everybody be fundamentally sound, and that he has their best interest at heart. And he's going to say, okay, here's where I see your son or I see your daughter. They can play at this level. And if you disagree with me, I'm not going to argue with you, but if you want to take them elsewhere, that's great. And we hope that they want to play with us, play for our team, play for our organization, and they buy into the role. They may not be the point guard. They may not be the stud shooter. They may not be the shortstop or the best pitcher, but they're going to be a part of something special. We're going to enhance their ability to play the game, and we're going to make them a better character that we feel college coaches are going to look at in the long run.
Very good. Coach Reel, will you touch on that, please?
Yeah, I feel like, identifying somebody, I'm talking about this from a parent point of view. So somebody who embodies, quote, unquote, your values, sees it from, my values would be somebody who's going to, show our young men or show my son, honesty, integrity, somebody who is going to embody, when I think of coaching, I think of somebody who's selfless or, embodies the word sacrifice, who's going to show that to my kid. Someone who's going to be honest with them, like Coach Bear said. Somebody's going to tell them the truth. We've got, guys in our program, we've already had the conversation at 15 years, they're 16 years old. Hey, this is kind of what we're looking at. Let's start, looking at where you want to be, and let's scratch off the Louisville, let's scratch off the UK, let's scratch off the IU Bloomington. That's not in the cards. But let's be honest about where we're looking at and where this is going, so people aren't let down in the end. And I think that's important because, this is about them reaching their full potential. It's not about them winning the game or winning the job. It's about them reaching their full potential as, student athletes and young men or young women. And someone who is committed to the program. I think that's the part that I think everybody fears. And if you're committed to the program, you're committed to the individuals who make up the program. So, and I think those three things, by just somebody who is not going to, my values would be not being a last-minute guy. So somebody's not going to call at midnight and say, okay, we changed our schedule, everybody. We're playing at, 10 a.m. tomorrow in Indianapolis, an hour and 45 minutes away. That would not be something that I would do. So I wouldn't want to play for a coach that would consider that or put, our players at risk or my son at risk. But I think, like I said, embodying your values, somebody who's going to be honest and open, and somebody who's really committed to the development of your son or your daughter and, their success not only in the sport but overall as a person. And that's really, really hard to find. I think, we've talked about it from three different, four of us have talked about it, not making it about themselves. And I think that happens a lot, but there are great programs out there that have those values that I think that parents can find. They just, they have to be selective. They have to be select when selecting a select team, or whatever. But I really think this is, it's a great opportunity for their kids. I really do. And if they find the right fit, I think it could be a tremendous asset in furthering their kids' personal development as a human being. I really do.
That's excellent. Coach Moore, some advice for parents out there that are going to be listening and talking about, with their child, maybe it's a couple of years, now, about AAU travel teams. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I'll kind of echo what Coach Bear and Coach Reel said. From a high school standpoint, we're getting parents and kids that may not have a great deal of information about AAU. So I always tell them to educate themselves. Talk to former players of ours or parents of those players that have been through this to get a perspective to to what it's about. Have realistic goals, and I think Coach Real said that. We're not all Division I athletes. Have a open deck, if you will, in terms of what am I able to do? Where am I able to play? And the other thing is, and Coach said it as well, it's not a select team if you didn't try out. If you are just playing to play on this team, they've asked, if your kids are getting together, that's not a select team. Select is where you go to a tryout, you've made this travel team, and you're going around these exposure events. Have an understanding of what it's about. I'll use an example. I had a girl of ours who her parents weren't very happy with her role at the high school level, and we had a meeting, and they said, well, she averaged 18 points a game on the AAU circuit. And I said, well, that's great, but who was she playing? Who were these kids that they were playing? Are they JV kids this year? Are they playing varsity? So understand the process. It's a great avenue for your kids to get the exposure, but also very much need to educate themselves.
Before signing off here, I want to just kind of talk about the passion that you guys when you guys speak. The passion you have is great, and hopefully those listeners hear that and understand. Those are the type of coaches that you should want for your children. And I commend you guys for all the time and effort that you put into coaching and making the youth better, not only physically and athletically and in that certain sport, but make them a better person, which I'm all about. So thank you three. Just a reminder to check out our website, gruelingtruth.net. You can find us on Stitcher, Spreaker, or the most popular iTunes with the search phrase Grueling Truth to listen to all of our shows anytime you'd like. For my guests, Kevin, Bear, and Ben, this is your host for The Real Deal, Josh Benjamin. Thanks for listening to The Real Deal and The Grueling Truth. Until next time, be real with what you say.